See it played, main battle area, actions. For this action, I'm going to have 3 US M1 tank platoons go up against 5 Soviet tank platoons. So for the US forces, this is my first platoon. First platoon, tank obviously, M1 tank, Black Company, or Black Company corresponds to Charlie Company. So, but this is not an entire platoon. The marker with the tank silhouette represents only one vehicle. Here's my second. Well, here's the first tank for my second platoon and the first tank for my third platoon, all Charlie Company. So my M1 tank platoons are 4 vehicle platoons. So this is the first vehicle, first platoon. And I'm going to add 3 tanks to the platoon. So this is a you call it a dual use side of the counter. That's 3 and that's 2. But anyways, we take 3 tanks, we add it to the first tank of first platoon like that. This is a 4 tank platoon. So that's first platoon. Take second platoon, same thing. Second platoon. And same thing with third platoon. So we have 3 4 tank platoons. Soviet organization is just a little different. Here we've got the white battalion is first battalion. This 1 dot here is first platoon. This one is not platoon but company. So it's first platoon, first company, first battalion. And these Soviet tank platoons are 3 tank platoons. So we've got, again, we've got the first tank strength here. This is the first tank plus 2 makes a 3 tank platoon. The second platoon, first company, first battalion, with 3 tanks. Third platoon. And then we have the first and second platoon, second company, first battalion. And these are the 2 forces that are going to go against each other in a straight up meeting engagement. And we're primarily going to be looking at the sequence of play using the basic or level 1 rules. So quickly we have, although I won't be using them in this action, they do have unspotted sides like that. So unspotted sides, the back sides. Again, I won't be using that here for this action. So for losses, losses are per individual vehicle. So this 4 tank M1 platoon, the first time it takes its first loss, the administrative marker, strength marker underneath will be rotated to the 2 vehicle side. So it's 2 vehicles plus 1 for 3 remaining vehicles. That's 3 remaining vehicles. It takes another hit. The administrative marker will be flipped over to its 1 tank side. So that's 2 remaining tanks. And when it takes its third loss, that'll be removed, leaving just the last tank. And similar for the Soviets, it'll be 3, then it'll go down to 2, then it'll go down to 1, and then it's eliminated. So here we have our very basic setup. I won't even discuss the terrain or the map. It is blindingly self-evident. But we got our U.S. company over here, and we've got the lead Soviet units over here with the 2 platoon company about a little over a kilometer behind, trailing off the map that way. This is the Detailed sequence of play. It is a dense full page. This game uses a lot of detailed steps and phases. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going through the detailed sequence of play. I'm actually going to be covering everything in the sequence of play, but I'll be noting what steps and phases, I guess steps and phases apply to different levels of the rules. The game does use 4 levels of rules. Great idea, by the way. But I'm only playing, the basic rules and level 1. So pre-game planning, level 2. So this only applies to level 2 rules. Obviously, these are cumulative, right? If you're playing level 2, that means you're playing the basic rules plus levels 1 and 2. And so forth. All right, so each player completely plans the actions of his forces during the game. Players use the appropriate unit planning chart to record all planning. The unit planning charts are designed to simplify and guide planning, so that's all just for level 2, so we're skipping that. Phase 1, reinforcement phase, step A. Okay, players consult the scenario instructions and determine any new forces to enter play. These new forces enter play according to the scenario instructions. Step B. Players determine the number of EW points to be committed during the turn by consulting pre-game planning recorded on the unit planning chart. This is level 2, so we're not using it in this action here. Step C. Players determine munitions for tactical aircraft entering play in the turn. Munitions are recorded on the unit planning charts. This is level 3. All right, now we'll go to phase 2. Simultaneous fire and movement phase. Phase 2 consists of 4 identical simultaneous fire and movement rounds. The rounds are rounds 1 and 3 are odd rounds, while rounds 2 and 4 are even rounds. Following sequence is repeated for each round. And I don't think they provided a round marker, which is interesting because they provided a game turn marker, a phase marker, and a step marker. Alright, so I grabbed my ad hoc round marker there, and I'll use the turn record to record rounds 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Alright, so step A. Phase... I already said that, didn't I? Step A, players remove odd markers from units during odd rounds and even markers during even rounds. So, we are talking about when a unit is marked, a unit may be marked odd or even, and you're going to remove these markers, remove odd markers on odd turns, remove even markers on even turns. Obviously, we don't have any of those. Players resolve contact attempts to change planning and impart displacement instructions. That's level 2. That goes into all your pre-game planning and order sheets. They don't call them order sheets. I guess they call them unit planning chart. All right, step B. Okay. Step B, players allocate available indirect fire missions by placing a marker on the target square. I do believe this is referring to little target markers there. Indirect fire target marker. All right, so placing marker on the target square. Indirect fire assets are allocated by the scenario instructions. Players resolve indirect fire missions individually, removing losses and the marker. Successful enemy direction finding occurs upon any dice rolls unmodified digit result of 8 or 9. The game does use percentile dice. The indirect fire asset used is subjected to immediate counter battery fire and losses determined. Players determine damage to wire markers in target squares. This is level 2, so must be referring to wire markers. Yes. Wire and broken wire. Wire, broken wire. Illumination missions automatically illuminate targets which become spotted That's level 2 rule or level 3 rules. Fast cam mission minefields are recorded. That's level 3. All right, going to step 3. Step 3. The Soviet player moves all unsuppressed units as desired, canting those units that move as a memory aid. I will be using, instead of canting units, which I still haven't gotten used to, I'm going to be using extra move extra move markers from ATS. So these are going to be my movement markers. Okay, dismounted infantry that move are marked with an odd marker during odd rounds and an even marker during even rounds to indicate their ability to move every other round only. Immediate combat is conducted as it occurs. I think immediate combat in this game is close combat, or it's actually it resembles more overrun combat. Formation changes are made as desired at the loss of 2 movement points. Soviet dismounted infantry dismounts and remounts. Funny that it should say that. I think formations are not at level 1. Okay, wire damage is determined if Soviet dismounted units enter a square containing a U.S. wire marker. This is level 2. Soviet headquarters may lay or repair wire to subordinate units during even rounds. Level 2. Subordinate leader initiative is determined as Soviet platoons sections enter squares adjacent to U.S. units. Subordinate leader initiative. That's pretty neat. Level 2. Dismounted infantry night movement is conducted, recorded. Level 3. Soviet helicopter units move. Level 3. U.S. ADA fire is resolved as Soviet helicopter units move. Level 3. U.S. anti-air armor ambushes are executed by the U.S. player as Soviet units move. Level 3. That'll be fun to get to. TMM and MTU units emplace bridges. Level 3. Minefield attacks are resolved as Soviet units enter the square containing the minefield. Level 3. U.S. obstacles are placed on the map as observed by maneuvering Soviet units. Oh, okay. Level 3. Soviet engineers in place has hasty obstacles. Level 3. Persistent chemical attacks are resolved on units entering the contaminated squares. Level 4. Level 1 radiation attacks are resolved against units that enter contaminated squares. Level 4. That was all step 3. So what we're doing is the Soviets are moving all unsuppressed units as desired and will be marked as they move. So how do we move the first tank platoon here, the lead tank platoon of the first Soviet company? Okay, in this action, basically, all the Soviet tanks have a movement allowance of 4 movement points per movement step. It's actually a lot of movement when you remember that there are 4 rounds, and there's a Soviet movement step in each of them. The US M1s have a movement allowance of 6 per movement step. So that's that. Next question is, since I want to move these Soviet platoons forward, if they follow the road, what does that mean? And when they enter the village here, the built-up area, what does that mean? And when they cross the stream there, stream, river, actually that's another question. Is this a stream or a river? What does that mean? Because otherwise I want to get these, I just want to move these Soviet tanks as far forward as possible. Yeah. Okay. So there is a road bonus. There's a +2 to the movement allowance if a unit begins the move on the road and moves entirely along the road. So I'll do that with the first platoon here. I think crossing, this is a stream, by the way. This is a stream, not a river or anything more significant. It's only +1 movement point to cross the stream. And I think crossing the road here is just crossing the road. Negates the effects of the stream on movement here. And urban doesn't seem to, the built-up areas, the urban areas, as they call it in the game, doesn't seem to do anything additional. So the first platoon, I think, can move with road movement 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Road movement there, and then, yeah, go ahead and follow 6, and 6. And then the trail company just barely, the lead platoon of the trail company minus just comes on the screen there. So now, well, yeah, for sake of completeness, I'll go ahead and mark all of my units as having moved. So all my moved Soviet units are marked. We go into step D. Step D, the U.S. player allocates non-missile direct fires by unspotted units by placing will fire markers on units. We have these great will fire and fired markers. But we don't have any, since obviously the hill and the woods still separate the U.S. and Soviet forces, but that's step D. These fires are resolved in losses removed. Firing units become spotted and have will fire markers inverted to display fired status. So we don't have anything for this step D. We go into step E. Both players simultaneously allocate direct fires by placing will fire markers on units to fire and announcing aloud their individual targets. In allocating fires, players determine if missile firing units are eligible to fire during this step. Missile units which have a step E marker, referring to okay, I saw it earlier. It's referring to, oh, yeah, it's this one, the E marker. E marker is the step E marker. Okay. So missile units which have a step E marker have the marker removed and are eligible to fire. Units with no marker are eligible to fire also. Step F. Now, well, I guess we're halfway through the sequence here. It should become obvious now that this is the type of game that has multiple layered actions, and layered meaning broken up over several steps and phases. And so as a result, you have these, will fire, fired, odd, phasey, even, I. You have all these markers to take you through this multi-tiered sequence of play. But in my experience, when I played this about 2 years ago for the first time, it all comes together. And when it all comes together, it's pretty exciting. But as you just go through it, there might be a sense of, okay, it's not clear what's happening, what's going on. Okay, step F. Players simultaneously resolve direct fires. Units that will attempt to suppress missile fires are identified and may initiate fire or change targets in an attempt to suppress missile firing units. Suppression of missile firing units is resolved on the ATGM suppression table. All right, this is the first mention of tables. I guess I'll real quickly show the table cards, I guess you'd say, tables and charts cards. So we have a US card and a Soviet card. Each of these cards are pretty involved, I guess. That's more than an 8.5 by 11. As a matter of fact, I think that's even bigger than a legal size. That's maybe 1.5 the size of a legal sheet. So you have a very large, but I'm going to say very large, but I'll also say brilliantly, well, in my first few plays, a couple of years ago anyways, I thought this combat results table is actually pretty nicely constructed. Okay, we'll see what I think this time around. And on the back side, you have all the little tables, all the little detailed tables. Some of them are actually quite small. But anyways, you have a US one and you have a Soviet one. Okay. All right. So that was... Okay, so suppressed ATGM units are marked with an even marker during even rounds and odd markers during odd rounds. Suppressed ATGM units have their fires aborted and are marked with a step E marker. All units identified to fire suppression have their will fire markers inverted to display fired status. Both players simultaneously execute all allocated direct fires. All target units receiving a suppression result are marked with an even marker during even rounds and an odd marker during odd rounds. All firing units will have will fire markers inverted to display their fired status. ATGM units that fired are marked with step E markers. Both players remove all casualties inflicted by direct fire, remove all fired markers. Obstacle breaching attempts are resolved, level 3, and that is step F. So basically, there's going to be a bunch of simultaneous direct fires. We don't have that yet. Forces haven't even spotted each other. Go on to step G. U.S. player moves all... Okay, so now the U.S. player is going to move all unsuppressed units. And let's see, this is dismounted infantry, which we don't have here. Wire damage. U.S. headquarters units may lay or repair wire. Subordinate leader initiative determined. Dismounted infantry night movement. GSR searches are conducted, level 3. GSR units are subjected to counter battery and direct fire mission if applicable, level 3. Helicopter units move, level 3. Soviet ADA is resolved. U.S. anti-armor ambushes are emplaced, level 3. ALVB units emplace bridges, level 3. Minefield attacks. Soviet obstacles are placed. U.S. engineers emplace hasty obstacles. Persistent chemical attacks, level 1 radiation. Okay, very similar to the Soviet movement phase, basically. So we'll move our U.S. units and mark them as moved. U.S. platoons have moved up. Lead platoon has entered the urban area there. Next platoon is here in the open, but generally behind this wooded area here. Trail platoon is back here on the road and in the wooded area here. So now step H, the Soviet player performs all actions the U.S. player performed in step D. So this is identical to the step D, except the Soviet player is acting. So that is the Soviet player allocates non-missile direct fires by unspotted units. So we don't have any of that, I think we don't have any. Step I, both players perform all actions as in step E with one exception. Step E was the simultaneous direct fires. Okay, so there's another simultaneous direct fire step except missile units with step I markers. Again, I mentioned that, I showed that once before, talking here about, yeah, that's a step I marker right there. So, where was I? Step I markers have the markers removed and are eligible to fire. Units with no markers are eligible also to fire, Okay. Step J. Both players perform the same actions as in step F. F was the simultaneous direct fires. Oh, I should clarify. Step E is basically the direct fire declaration step. Step F is the simultaneous resolution. Yes. So now we have another step F, or another resolution, okay. With one exception, ATGM units that fire or are suppressed while firing are marked with step I markers, okay. Okay, step K. Now at this point, if you're a relatively new wargamer, I can imagine you're probably definitely saying, All right, I've completely lost what we're doing, but again, I'm saying when you play, this is the type of rules where you have to get going. You go through this a few times and then it all starts to click. All right, step K, both players realign canted units. So for me, that's going to be removing my markers here. Yeah, those units which move during the round. Smoke markers are removed if appropriate. Smoke markers, talking about your smoke markers. So smoke markers are removed. Hasty defenses are placed on the map if applicable. Illumination markers are removed if appropriate, level 3. Non-persistent chemical attack markers are removed if appropriate, level 4. Okay, in case you were wondering, no, you have absolutely no fancy graphic markers with all this non-persistent, persistent chemicals and radiation references. This is probably the time to say real quickly in passing the obvious. I think there's a lot going on in this game despite the incredibly lackluster graphics. I would say almost non-existent graphics. But you have to look past that. I think there's a lot going on here that is just really satisfying. It delivers a lot of satisfying gameplay despite the atrocious graphics. Okay. Then you repeat steps A through K once for each of the 4 rounds in the simultaneous fire movement phase. So then we would go back up and do round 2, which is what we're going to do. So all the movement markers, have moved markers, are removed, and we will next start a whole nother round. Obviously, probably in this next round, we're going to have some direct fire going on and going to get into some action, more action.